I'm Bundy.
And I'm Luke.
And you're listening to the Noise Levels podcast. And tonight, what do you have for us tonight, Luke?
This is episode 4, and we're going to be looking at Penrith ska punk band, Little More Than You.
Yeah, sweet.
This is Radio.
I was walking out of Broadway, kicking up a page. I met this funky guy, and I stopped him with a loud. His clothes are hanging off him, every groovy kind of flair. He got the funky piercings and the multicolored hair. Well, he's seen how he shed, so I listened for a while. He looked me up and down, I said, I could you got some style. If there's one thing I have learned, it is this and only this. He turned to me, and he said, knows what it's all about. And if you ain't got that, then you might as well shout. Sound to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. Knows what it's all about. And if you ain't got that, then you might as well shout. Sound to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. Hey, hey, hey! So, I took it on myself to spread the message on the streets of the lonely days away for everyone you make. Doesn't matter much I call them or your nationality, unless the only language you speak was me. And that's what it's all about. And if you ain't got that, then you might as well shout. Sound to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. That's what it's all about. And if you ain't got that, then you might as well shout. Sound to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. Shout yourself to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. Love's what it's all about. And if you ain't got that, then you might as well shout yourself to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. You better shout yourself to a bottle of bourbon. Think about how you better love someone tonight. Love's what it's all about. Love's what it's all about. Love's what it's all about. So think about how you better love someone tonight.
So that was Love's What It's All About, which is the 4th song on Little More Than You's only release, which was an EP called Rhymes with Orange. What do you remember of Little More Than You, Bundy?
I remember him being, they were super tight. And the lead singer, Joe, he had that charisma that not many bands have. He just had something about him, didn't he, that just attracted you to want to watch him.
Yeah, and...
yeah.
Well, the interesting thing that I find about Little More Than You is, like, they stick out in the memory of a lot of people who was in Penrith back in that time, but they only played for about 18 months, and then they were over.
Yeah, they sort of came and went in a flash, didn't they?
Yeah, and it was quite a burst of energy in the Penrith scene. It was a point in time from the very end of 2000, so their first show was like December 30th in 2000, and then their big year was 2001, and then they finished up about halfway through 2002. And this was the window of time in Penrith when Obzine, which was the local Penrith, it's like a cross between Street Press and a zine. So it had a little bit of funding behind it. It was run by a guy named Mark Alston, and we've spoken about this, I'm sure, before. And he put out this zine, and it just became this sort of glue that held together the Penrith scene back then.
Yeah.
And every band, if they wanted to be in it, they could be in it. People would write reviews of local shows, and they'd go in it. About 26 or 24 issues were done in total across these years. It started in late 1999, and it sort of reached its peak in 2001, which is when Little More Than You reached their peak too. And it was just this time when there was just heaps of places to play around Penrith, and Penrith was its own scene. And you didn't have to go to the city to play shows. Lots of bands only played in Penrith and the lower Blue Mountains.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the way up to Katoomba. There was lots of shows there. Springwood was another mecca.
Yes, and the Blue Mountains, for people who don't live in the area, is like quite a large area. Like it takes you an hour to drive from Penrith to Katoomba, which is like the top part of the Blue Mountains. So everything in between Katoomba and Penrith, and like there's Blackheath around Katoomba too. All there's like this string of towns along the train line, and there were lots of bands from the Blue Mountains, and Blue Mountains was just like you talk about it as if it was one place, but really it's across like 40 kilometers. But because it's these remote little villages that are just held together by a train line, it's like one community almost.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so and there's bands that came from that area, and a lot of them didn't go and play the city, and a lot of them were young, so they were like people in the bands who were like under 18, so they couldn't go and play pubs in the city. They had to play at the halls and PCYCs around that sort of Western Sydney, Blue Mountains area.
Up there, especially in the Blue Mountains, the under 18 scene, it was huge.
So,
yeah.
So the band Little More Than You, it started with two bands, one called Moneypenny and another one called Speckled Foam. And Speckled Foam were a ska punk band from the Penrith area who started in like 1996 and finished around 1999. And there were two members of that band who went on to form Little More Than You, and that was the drummer Marty and the singer Joe. And so I've got this quote here from Marty about the idea of Little More Than You, and he said, and this is from an interview, like just a text interview that we did earlier in the year. It came out of the back of Speckled Foam. Joe and I wanted to start a band with a bigger sound with a full-time horn section. We dabbled with it in Speckled Foam, but that wasn't a full-time part of the band. We used it at some points, and we had sort of started merging into a lot of the ska sound already, which you can hear in the Speckled Foam recordings, which was really fun, and I think we were enjoying it at the time. That's probably how Little More Than You began. So we hear there sort of the idea of Little More Than You. So we have Marty and Joe looking to start a new band after Speckled Foam had finished. And then meanwhile, we have this other band called Moneypenny, who aren't as well known as Speckled Foam. They didn't play as many shows.
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
No, I never saw them either, but the two members from that band that went on to be in Little More Than You, Flavell and Adam, also known as Fuzz, were the two core members of Moneypenny. And so I'll play this clip from Flavell talking about that band.
My neighbour was Don Bartley. He started on like as an electrician in studios and worked his way up to being a masterer. So he mastered like Cold Chisel, and if you look on the back of basically any CD or record from Australia, his name's on the back. And his daughter put together Jasper in Blaxland. So that was kind of like Melrose Hall or the Axolotl. So she kind of like told me about it, and I took it to my school in Springwood, and it was like a monthly event or a fortnightly event, and it was just the thing to do. Like everyone just went. Like, everyone who was into music just went and watched these bands. And then, Melrose Hall kicked off, and me and Fuzzy got into that. And then going up to Katoomba, we saw Glister, and it was like that girl goes to our school, and that guy goes to our school. That's fucking awesome. Like, these aren't just people that, come from like other towns to come in and play the gigs. And like, everyone loves House Brigade. It was like, didn't really know where they were from yet. Like, we met them, talked to them, and, asked them about songs they played and bands they were into, and, just pestered them, really, like 14-year-olds looking up to the older kids, pester the shit out of people. And I was like, well, fuck it, we're playing covers every school concert, we're playing a cover of some bands. Like, why don't we start writing our own shit? Because those guys can do it, and they're still at school. Me and Adam just went, well, let's see if we can come up with riffs and songs and, get out there and do it.
So what was that first band called that you and Adam did?
Moneypenny.
Moneypenny.
Yeah, I had it written on the front of my 1982 Ford Meteor. I pranged it, and it was all red except for this one white panel at the front. Right across the front, it said Moneypenny. Somehow I spaced it out evenly, and it actually looked pretty funny. Like, it probably looked stupid to everyone else, but it was the Moneypenny mobile.
So it would have been late 90s. I think I remember my first sort of local music experience would have been Jasper. Jasper at the Blacksland library there. Good friend of mine, Brendan Flavell, he was in Blacksland, and he dragged me along. And I think the first one I went to, we didn't even go in. We were just drinking up in the bush, and we could sort of hear everything. But Jasper, Melrose Hall. I was sort of more a mountains kid, so like, I'd see stuff up in Katoomba, Blacksland. We ended up moving to Emu Plains, so I guess that opened up all the Penrith stuff to me as well. But late 90s, Jasper, Hassel Brigade, and then me and Flavell started Moneypenny in high school. We'd been like 96 or 97. That's how it all started.
So that was that second clip there was Adam, who Flavell refers to as Fuzzy, and it's some name that came out of his coach in the football team used to call him Fuzzy for some reason. So I got that out of Flavell, and I just couldn't fit it into the podcast. So there you go. The Jasper, they both spoke about the Jasper, which is a series of gigs put on at Blacksland Library in the building there, all ages shows.
Yep. Yeah, I remember going there. I've seen Hassel Brigade there.
Yeah, we saw Hassel Brigade.
Yeah.
I remember we saw, I think, Sickened there as well, which were a metal band from that area. He came out of Futile.
Yeah, I remember that now,
And Swindle, I saw Swindle there, which was like a punk band inexplicably made up of 12-year-old kids. And that was their thing. Everyone saw Swindle and went, wow, they're so young. Can't believe they're playing punk music. It's cool,
Yeah, awesome.
So that's what was happening with the four sort of key members who sort of form the base of Little More Than You. So Joe and Marty, Speckled Foam, Flavell and Adam in Moneypenny, these two bands, and then sort of kicking around in the mid to late 90s. So the thing with Little More Than You is there's also a brass section. So meanwhile, Chloe, who's the person who sort of was, I guess, the writer of a lot of the brass lines in the band. Here's a couple of clips of her talking about her intro to the scene.
I used to play piano. I mean, I'm classically trained in piano. I think that was my first instrument since I was about 5, I think. And, I was the resident piano player at my primary school in Leone. So all the Christmas events or anything that required piano, that was me busting out. So that was my first scene. But, like when I hit teenage years and, of course, angsty teenage vibes, I started to get into punk music a lot and started hanging around a lot of the Penrith kids. That had a big influence on my musical taste. And with sax, I guess, because I started saxophone after piano, I probably would have been about 10. Funnily enough, the reason I started to play saxophone was because of Lisa Simpson. And I was like, that's cool. I think it was that episode where, the blues episode. And I was watching that and I was like, yeah, I'd love to play sax. That would be pretty fun. And my parents were basically like, no, that's one of the loudest instruments. Can you stick to piano? We can control that noise. But no, they eventually succumbed to my request, and I got a shitty Yamaha alto sax, and I was taking lessons down the road in Emu Plains with a teacher called Georgie Morgan. I mean, he would have been 80 at the time, I reckon. Don't think he's with us now, but he was like a full-on jazz dude, and I remember going to his house and it like reeked of cigars and whiskey, and I'm this 10-year-old kid trying to play saxophone. So that's how sax started, and then just combining that influence of punk music and especially ska. I was really into bands like Less Than Jake, Voodoo Glow Skulls, and the fact that they had a horn section kind of prompted me to be like, wow, sax can do this also in punk music. That's awesome. How do I start? How do I get into bands?
We spoke about this a little while ago about the artifact of the Spud Gun website, which lists you as a member.
Yeah. The Angel Fire website. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because there's no photo on there. It's just an insert photo here of Chloe. Thank God. I don't know what photo they would have used. But yeah, look, Spud Gun, I mean, I knew Blake from way back when. We dated for a bit. Blake was my first boyfriend. I don't know if you want to include that bit or not. Feel free to edit that. No, but yeah, so, I mean, Blake literally lived down the road. He was in Emu Plains. I was in Leone. And yeah, no, you know, just through hanging out, it was like, cool, like Spud Gun, let's experiment with some horns. Hey, Chloe plays sax, let's see where this can go. We would always be like, yeah, we should jam, but it never actually eventuated. And then by the time, you know, some gigs had lined up and it was like, yes, let's do this, I had caught wind of what was happening with Little More Than You, and I knew that those guys were looking for a full-on, you know, ska punk horn section, and that kind of appealed to me, I guess, a bit more because they were like determined on doing ska punk, whereas Spud Gun were just a bit more experimental with it. And so there was that. There was Spud Gun, and then again, according to the Obscene interview, apparently I was scheduled to be in Bad Town All Stars, and that was like in the works, but it never eventuated.
Yeah, so I love that how you know, having the sax teacher, house smells like cigars and whiskey. That's so cool.
Yeah, and just the image of young 10-year-old Chloe wandering into that with the blue smoke.
So, yeah, this old jazz master.
Yeah. And there were a few
like the Yoda of jazz.
Well, there were a few of those guys around that area. Like I learned the drums from a jazz guy called Mal Morgan, and he was a similar guy. You walk into his house and it just had this like old world smell to it, you know.
Yeah,
and he'd like
it smelled like a speakeasy bar from the 30s.
Yeah, and he'd say, okay, for payment it has to be in cash, and my parents would give me the money to pay him, and then like he'd pull out this money clip from his pocket. It was like this wad of cash, and he'd just like he'd always tell me about how he refused to put his money in a bank, and he just had money stored all around his house, you know. And he's no longer with us either. He played in a jazz band called Glapic and Stuck, who were quite well known. But lots of these dudes around, because the Blue Mountains is that sort of artsy sort of place.
Yeah.
And so I think that's sort of part of that influence. So we got all the little bits and pieces of the band here floating around. Chloe getting interested in ska punk music and potentially joining bands like Spud Gun and Bad Town All Stars, but it didn't quite happen. And then Moneypenny happened briefly, and then Flavell and Adam, the band Moneypenny didn't last too long, and there's no pictures that I know of Moneypenny. I've just got a couple of flyers and a picture of a T-shirt. We don't even have a picture of that car that Flavell described with Moneypenny written on the front bonnet, which would have been pretty cool to see. Yeah. So here's a clip of Flavell talking about how he joined Little More Than You.
And Joe was working at a pawn shop. Just go and annoy him. Really, just piss him off. Just hassle him, and because I'd never actually seen Speckled Foam. I'd never even heard a record or anything. I just knew him. I knew he was my girl I went to school with's older brother. He asked me to audition, and I fucking faked it. I totally faked it. I remember Timmy Trumpet played trumpet at school, and one year I was like, "Hey guys, we should play that cover that Real Big Fish do, and get the trumpet dude to do the brass part." And he was like, "Fucking no." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, I've already learnt the bass line." So sat down, and Marty played this, because Marty was originally the guitarist. He wanted to be the guitarist. He was sick of all the drums around. Yeah, he started playing this guitar riff that turned into our first song. And I just kind of moved the Real Big Fish bass line down a couple of frets and just kind of went along with what he was playing. But I didn't even play the right notes, but I don't know, they liked it. So then after that, I was like, shit, that's the only bass line I really know that's like a walking bass line. Like, you know, I played bass from about 12 because no one else wanted to. So I was like, fuck it, I want to be in a band. So I'll buy a bass, and I bought this $200 piece of shit someone built, but it's pretty cool. I still have it. I fucking love it. But they got me in, and then I said, "Oh, my mate can play a bit of drums," and that was Fuzzy. So Fuzzy came over and played a bit of drums, and they were like, Fuzzy just couldn't get that ska. He couldn't get that beat going. So like, they were like, "Yeah, nah, we got to let him go." I'm like, "Yeah, sorry, mate." On the way home, I'm like, "Sorry, mate, you're not in." So yeah, that didn't work out. And then we got a couple more guitarists in, and then Dean Conlon came in he was in Scratch Habit and then Badanga. Yeah, I don't think he was feeling it from day one, and I went, Fuzzy's the guitarist. And then Fuzzy came back in, and me and Fuzzy have been playing together since we were about, we've been 13.
So we have Fuzz and Flavell joining the band, and Fuzz starting on drums, and I didn't mention this before, but Marty, the drummer of Speckled Foam, wanted to jump to guitar for Little More Than You, and he started on guitar, but they couldn't find a drummer who could, encapsulate that ska sound.
I wonder who else we know that jumped from drums to guitar.
Lots of people, but that ska sound is hard to get on the drums. Like, you have to be able to play offbeats and things like that, and if you're just playing in punk bands, it's not really going to happen for you. So Marty already knew how to do that because he'd been working towards that in Speckled Foam. So he had to make his way back to the drums, and Fuzz, who had played the drums in the band but not well enough, then jumped on guitar. So here's a quote from Joe talking about what happened next, or what happened from his point of view. And he says, after Speckled Foam parted ways, Marty and I were determined to get a ska band with horns off the ground. It was a time-consuming challenge building a 7-piece band from scratch. Marty and I had no idea who to draft, so we went scouting. We didn't really know any of the members who would eventually form the band. Not well, anyway. Getting Brendan on bass was a key moment. He went to school with my sister. He brought in Fuzz, who initially auditioned for drums but ended up on guitar. Fuzz was and is a lovely bloke who had a strange fixation with wanting to fight me. Presumably, he still does. So that's I think that's probably tongue in cheek. But anyway, so we can see there the band coming together, and here is a quote from Chloe about them rehearsing.
So Floppy, do you know where Floppy is now?
No, just for the sake of people listening, explain who Floppy is.
Okay, so Floppy, I believe his real name is Daniel Smith. I could be wrong, but that's my memory of Floppy. Floppy was a dude. He just used to always be around at like house parties and like skate parks, and he was just always hanging out. He was always super nice to me, at least. We'd always chat, and he knew that I was involved with music and, again, scheduled to play with these bands that never eventuated, but he knew I played saxophone, and I think he was connected with Joe and Marty, I believe. I don't know how exactly, but I remember him saying to me, hey, this band, obviously Speckled Foam back in the day, they're doing a new project. They want a horn section. You play sax, right? And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So it was through Floppy that I got introduced to Joe. And yeah, the rest is history. We just started jamming at Farzan's studio. They had song bases already by the time I joined. So I think that was helpful. And how the horn section kind of works is that you have the bass, you have the punk rock songs or whatever you have. And then on top of that, we try and create like a melody that would go with what it would never start with horns. It would always start with the basis of guitar, bass, and drums, and even vocals, to be honest. So they had these bass like foundations already with the songs. And then again, with, I guess, my musical history and whatnot, like I found writing melodies pretty easy. And again, I was listening to a lot of ska at the time, so a lot of influence from Less Than Jay, Kaboom Glow Skulls, and they have very intricate horn sections, those bands. So yeah, I just started jamming some melodies, and at the time it was me and Tim, and he was more of a jazz guy, right? So I think that was maybe one of the differences, because I was like actively listening to ska. I had a lot of idea about how ska lines could form into some of the songs. So yeah, I may have been a bit bossy about that. I can't remember, but I was pretty adamant on like certain horn lines. But again, Tim's a cool dude, and he was like, yeah, let's go with that. And he would add his flair on trumpet, and I would go in with the sax. And then eventually, of course, when we got Scott on trombone, he added a different dimension with that. So yeah, it was. Look, we probably rehearsed, I don't know, a few months, and then we had a first show, and yeah, worked out really well.
I went to the same school as Flav and Fuzz. We went to St. Columbus High School. They're in the year below me. And I think they played in a band called Moneypenny, if I remember correctly. And, each year there's a school review where we would play, songs or skits. We'd do it, I think, at the Danger and Sutherland Theatre in Penrith. And so the guys came to me and said, "Hey, we should do a cover of a Real Big Fish song. Let's do it for the review." And so I think we tried to do "Take on Me," and it was a lot of fun. I think we sucked because we practiced maybe once over lunchtime, and then Flavell just said, "Hey, why don't you come along? This band I think is starting up. We need some brass players. I think you should be a part of it." And that's how I sort of became a part of it.
So that was Tim, the trumpet player for Little More Than You, talking after Chloe then. And Tim has a background in sort of jazz music and things like that, and he played the flugelhorn and the cornet before the trumpet.
Wow.
I don't know if you know much about brass music, but there's just this whole cornucopia of like weird instruments like the euphonium and things like that. And
I think as far as my knowledge goes, it's probably like primary ska brass instruments.
Because the ska brass section is if you have a full brass section, it's going to be sax, trumpet, trombone. They don't really get those other instruments in there. I guess it just doesn't get that same sound. But I would like to see a ska band with a tuba. So brass was in Tim's blood, and both his father and his grandfather also played the trumpet before him. So it was interesting to see that sort of there. So here's another quote from Joe talking about the horn section coming together, and he says, "The horn section was the tricky part. Scott, who played the trombone, was a great guy who'd been in the year above me at school. He was also a clown, as in literally a children's entertainer. The balloon animals were the best. Tim, the trumpet, brought the boho jazz vibes. Chloe was in the scene already and a musical virtuoso. She was responsible for a lot of the brass lines that really made the band sing. It didn't hurt that her mum booked a local venue, and it took what felt like forever to get it off the ground. Have you ever tried to schedule a band practice around 7 people? But when it did happen, it really took off in the West." And Joe also says, and this is from the same interview that I conducted for just another text interview for the Noise Levels website. And he says, we needed a trombone player, and I knew Scott from primary school, but I didn't have his number or anything, and I'd been to his house once in year 5. So me and Marty went around, like walking the streets to find his house, and we found it, and he was up for it. So he literally just walked around until he saw this house that he recognised, and they knocked on the door. It just reminds me of like, is it the Blues Brothers when they're walking around getting the band back together? They're recruiting people. That's what this story reminds me of. So that's the last of the members to join. Scott Carroll, who in doing this project, I realised I went to primary school with him, and we're in the same kindergarten class, and we went to each other's birthday parties and things like that. So that's cool. Something that I had fallen away in my memory, but it's been cool reconnecting with Scott and just chatting with him since doing this. Yeah. And so here's a quote from Scott about how his perspective of joining Little More Than You.
When I was a kid, I had piano lessons, but then when I went to high school, we had a really good music program at St Dom's, and I played euphonium, of all things, and played in every band that I could. Then when I went to McCarthy, I switched to trombone because they didn't have as big a selection of instruments. Because I'd gone to school with, I was a year ahead of Joe, he and Marty came around and found me and asked if I'd join the band.
Remember their first show?
No, I couldn't say.
No? So their first show...
Maybe. I might have been there, but I wouldn't have realised it was
you were
their
there.
first show.
No, you were there, man. Trust me, you were there. Their first show was on the 30th of December 2000. They'd been practicing for I think somewhere between 3 to 6 months to get their show fitness together. And then they played at the Jolly Frog.
I remember that.
So our band, the Shenanigans, played that same gig. Yeah. And it was us... Little More Than You, a band called Lisa by Night, and another band whose name escapes me at the moment, but it'll be up on the flyer that I put up. Might have been Mr. Nigel, might have been someone else. So the first show was at the Jolly Frog, and they headlined the first show because it's a big, massive ska band. Why wouldn't you put them on last? That they're going to be fun. So here's some quotes from Tim and then Adam talking about that first show.
Yeah, the Jolly Frog. All I remember is the thing I remember most is being so freaking hot on stage. It was It was like really low ceiling, black walls, really super bright stage lights, and 7 of us being up on stage trying to make our best impression, and it was so flippin' hot.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun, actually, and I was actually really surprised at how the band kind of transformed on stage. Practicing in a studio, you kind of get one impression, but then when there's a crowd and we're all dressed up, and Flav and Joe had all done their hair, and it was excitement in the room, and the band was almost like we looked and felt completely different. It was really exciting.
I remember the first one at the Jolly Frog.
Yeah,
I remember the first one. I had just had my bedroom blaster on a office chair on stage, and I worked the balls up all set to do a bit of stage, a bit of a jump, and I remember I kicked the chair with my amp, and it fell backwards. I remember it very clearly.
So, how long did it take to shake the nerves off?
Oh man, I still get nervous.
So that was their first show at the Jolly Frog, and it was on like Donkey Kong after that. Little More Than You became really big in the local scene really quickly.
Yeah, they always had massive crowds. Well, for the Penrith scene, massive crowd. They were always packed venues. Like...
They were. So you go to the Kelts Bar, it'd be packed. They'd get support slots for the Porkers and Area 7. If they were coming through Penrith, and they'd be big shows. But on their own, they'd be big shows too. And they were pretty much, if it wasn't supporting a bigger band, they'd be headlining an all ages show in Penrith at places like the Channel Cafe, and other halls around the area. Here's just a series of quotes from 4 of the band members talking about that sort of explosion of popularity, and just a few sort of things around the shows they played. It's going to be Flavell, and then we'll hear from Scott, Chloe, and Adam.
But the first show was a headline out of nowhere, and I remember people yelling out it was a speckled foam show basically, but it was a new speckled foam. It was Little More Than You. So it was pretty crazy that we were headlining. And then the next gig was Nitocris at Kelts Bar. And they came out to watch us play our cover of Working Class Man by Jimmy Barnes. And I just remember looking over and seeing them and just going, oh, shit, that's fucking ace. We didn't really go down from there. Like it was supporting the Porkers, it was supporting Area 7. I think we did a gig in Newcastle with a German band called Blue Killer. But going out to Bathurst and playing with the Porkers. That was a good one actually, because I turned up first and got the ticket. I got the keys to the rooms, and for some reason we got 3 rooms. And then the next morning when we're all leaving, we walking down to the car park, and there's the Porkers in a dorm room with all bunk beds. And I turned to Adam and I went, I think that's our room. Because we got 3 full rooms with like 2 double beds everywhere and a set of bunks in the corner. We got these 3 massive rooms, and the Porkers we're all in bunk beds.
That's just where you just quietly back out.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I got here first.
I was surprised because at first I was like, yeah, this is just like a hobby band, surely. But no, it got quite serious, and then I was getting more excited about it, and my friends were getting excited about it. But, I think it came, again, right time, right place. It was at a time where ska punk music was kind of peaking. We had bands like the Porkers, Area 7 in Australia. Even swing bands like Louisville Sluggers, like swing was peaking as well. I mean, Cherry Pop and Daddies, they were that Zoot Suit Riot song that hit off, right? So time and place, it was the era where the punk kids were like, oh yeah, melodic shit with horns, that's fun. So I think, and it didn't just appeal to the punk rockers, it was also like, you know, we played a lot of Celts bar shows, and I'm sure the crowd was a mixed bag, but people were like, oh yeah, I can jam to this. This is pop. This is, you know, catchy. So I think all those combinations really worked well for us. Of course, like Joe on vocals, like he's a great vocalist, so that certainly helped pull the crowds. And yeah, how we vibed as a band, it was really unique.
Joe had a driving creative force. It was his baby while he was in Little More Than You. He came looking for all the people, as far as I knew. He had that crazy spiky hair, and he was out the front, and he was just such an energetic front man.
That was the sort of Fat Records kind of era, you know, where you'd go down to Plaza Records and get a CD for a couple of bucks. Like, it was just, you know, it was just, that style was just huge at the time. It was just that skate punk kind of style was just kicking off. Less Than Jake and all that sort of stuff was huge, and I don't know, yeah.
So one of the things about this podcast is how we pick episodes. It's usually determined by the material that we have or access to people that we have. So like Nail was purely because the 4 members wanted to do it. You know, they reached out to us and said, hey, I know you're interested in hearing about Nail, because I was talking to them behind the scenes, just trying to get information, and they said, why don't we all come together? And I said, well, let's make this a podcast. And in the case of you know, Spilt Milk, there was that the lost music that we were able to uncover through the help of Chris Duckworth. But in this case, what sort of prompted me to want to do Little More Than You, aside from the fact that we both went and saw like heaps of their shows and loved them at the time, is that there's a second CD that's been uncovered, a live album of about, I don't know, 14 to 18 songs. And it has about another, you know, 10 or so songs which aren't on the EP. And so we're gonna play one of these songs now. This is a song called Dependency. It was recorded live at Panthers, and it's a pretty decent recording. I don't know why they didn't release it. I think it was just for their own rehearsal, like just to have these songs, like demos of these songs recorded. But it's just cool to be able to hear other Little More Than You songs that, you know, I haven't heard for 20 years.
Yeah, totally.
So this is Dependency.
Before I give myself a heart attack, the constant battle between the gun that's left in me and the devil that won't get off my back. It's so hard to make so good of something that is so bad. Like that time my girlfriend touched me, and I guess it's something I have to find out for myself on my own time. Yet I'm running out of change. Hold up, I need me to run the top, I got away. Got no money to pay the rent today. I guess it doesn't matter, cause before the things I lost, I got something that I used to have. So then it's just not magic. Politics, yeah, fuck off all you bureaucrats. Don't wanna hear your shit anymore. Total disregard of all responsibility. My morals have just walked out the door. It's so hard to make so good something that is so bad. Like that time my girlfriend touched me, and I guess it's something I have to find out for myself on my own time. Yet I'm running out of change. For the fucking me to run the time I got away. Got no money to pay the rent today. Yes, it doesn't matter, cause before things I lost, I got something that I used to have. So fantasy of an attack. myself on my own time. Hands are running out of change for the fucking meter at the top of my way. Got no money to pay the rent today. Yes, it does matter, cause the phone things I lost. I got something that I used to have. Dependency on the mountain. Dependency on the mountain. Dependency on the mountain. Dependency on the mountain. Dependency on the mountain.
Yeah, well, I didn't know how to do the ska guitar style, like, you know, like I'd hear Mad Caddies and other ska bands, and I'd hear that twangy telly kind of style, and I honestly didn't know how to do it, like, and I still don't really, like, it was all new to me, you know. I was used to just power chords. I mean, the power chord bits were fine, but the clean ska guitar, I never really mastered it. And I remember it was Tom, I think, from Bagster, saying like, "Hey man, what's the deal? Like, what's the deal with your guitar on Little More Than You? Like, it sounds kind of weird." I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't doing it right, but you know, I sort of grew up on. I mean, I sort of started playing guitar to like grunge and metal, and then I kind of like got right into NoFX because to me that was like, okay, this is like easy punk, but it's fast and like almost some of it almost sounded like metal to me. Like it was so like melodic sort of guitar, like dual guitars and fast drums, and I was like, okay, this is like a perfect mix of metal and punk kind of thing. So yeah, Little More Than You was a style that was very new to me. You know, it was very new to me. It was fun. It was super fun.
Yeah, I just got to say, how Adam's saying there that his guitar wasn't. It sounded fine to me.
Yeah, you wouldn't have known. Hey?
Nah, not at all. It sounded tight as to me, like whenever I heard him.
But
So, yeah.
Tommy from Bagster would pick up on that because he's got a good ear for music and he plays multiple instruments, and I could just hear him saying that really. So one of the things that happened, well, Little More Than You sort of had this burst of sort of popularity. Obviously, they were looking to record a CD, and that was on the horizon. And you know, that live CD was just something that sort of came to us in the course of me researching this, and Scott and Chloe talked about it, and Scott was able to supply it to us. So this is a quote from Joe about how they ended up on Channel V. And so Channel V was, you know, a music channel back then, a bit like MTV. I don't even know if it's still going. Is it still going?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong. It was on Fox, on cable.
Yeah.
Was it?
Well, I'm a guy who didn't even have TV for about 8 years. Yeah. We had no TV aerial for 8 years. So I don't know. But Channel V, they ended up on Channel V, and here's Joe talking about that. And he says, we sent in a bio and a demo to Channel V, and apparently the guy who was choosing what got played was a big ska fan, so he was really impressed, and it was really good. I had heaps of fun doing it. It was cool. There's heaps of talent in Western Sydney. It's heaps underrated, and I was just happy to represent Penrith on TV. And now I'll leading to some quotes from Adam and Scott, both talking about Channel V, and then just a cool little clip of Tim talking about the look of the band.
Being backstage and one of the hosts, one of the Channel V hosts, came up to us and was like, "Oh, what can I say to the crowd about something about Penrith?" And we were like, and just gave him like the local things to do. I remember it all being very, very overwhelming, like TV cameras and stuff like that. I never watched the record or heard the recording of that. I'm kind of scared to track it down, to be honest. But
Channel V was great fun. I remember, I definitely remember being on stage, and I remember I was really conscious of the cameraman, the roving cameraman that was down in front of the horn section, because he kept trying, like the trombone's got such a great kind of angle on it when you're filming, he kept trying to get it right up in the bell of the trombone, and I was trying to play to the camera a bit. They did a bit with us, little segment with Moshe before he went to The Bachelor and all of that.
I had a chin strap beard with a little like goatee that I was starting to play around with, which looked bloody terrible. I was in that really messy, late teens, early 20s phase, and just look back at that and I look like a comic character. But I think that's part of it. Like we all looked like comic book characters, and that was a bit fun.
So we just off the back of Tim's comment about them looking like comic book characters in that early noughties, late 90s style that the band encapsulated. I don't think we can get away with doing this podcast, Bundy, without talking about Flavell's
his infamous side horns haircut.
His haircut. Flavell made a comment to me about not wanting to make comments about people's haircuts, but he had this haircut at the time, which is sort of, I think the only other place I've sort of seen anything similar was, I think No Doubt, one of the members of No Doubt had a similar thing where they had the shaved head and the two sides, like enough hair to sort of sculpt into horns. But
yeah, maybe the guy from, what was that, British?
I don't know. You mean like Vivian from The Young Ones?
No, the guy from. I don't know.
I don't know either. But it looked cool when they were like sculpted in the horns. But when Flavell didn't have the horns up, we used to. I remember we used to say to him like, "Hey, you look like you got puppy dog ears," which wasn't very cool. But I think that's part of that era of having that sort of. Yeah. That look and the ska band vibe, and
absolutely,
you can see it in the photos. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because you'll see it in some of the photos, and you had to be there. I think definitely had to be there.
Good times.
So the band records a CD called Rhymes with Orange, and so here's a set of clips of the members talking about that CD, the EP that they did, which was a great EP and like very solid. I still listen to it now.
Yeah.
And so here's Adam and then Tim and then Flavell and Chloe all talking about that.
It was in North Sydney with Adam Barnes, I think. And I remember going in and recording again. All very new to me. It was the first time. Yeah, I remember it being fun. Yeah, terrifying, but fun.
The brass recorded live, which makes it sound much better, but it means that if you make a mistake, you start again. And so we started again many, many times, and I think that wasn't well understood by us as brass players, or it wasn't well understood by me anyway. And I think it was really not well understood by the rest of the band, who were able to do stuff in 1 or 2 takes.
We came up with Rhymes with Orange in the studio. Someone said, "What are we going to call this thing?" And I just was being a dickhead and went, "Little more than you, Rhymes with Orange." And someone laughed, and that was it.
It was Michelle Catanzaro, Joe's younger sister. She was studying graphic design at the time, I believe, and now she's like a full doctorate in design, and she's amazing. And I remember being at their house, and Michelle starts she's got all these orange peels, and then she's getting the scanner on the whatever it was, like the home scanner thing, and she's like scanning these orange peels, and then she wanted to put like a piercing through the logo, and it was such a process. So she designed the cover, she did all the artwork for that. She also did a lot of our creative photo shoots. So I think some of the photos that you're using on the website, they're all by Michelle.
So here's a few quotes from band members, Chloe, Tim and Flavell, talking about some of the memorable shows that they played. So we're in the middle of the Little More Than You sort of bonanza, and they've just recorded their album, and they're playing shows all around Blue Mountains and Penrith pretty solidly. We tried to figure out how many shows they played. I reckon it's probably something like around 20 to 30 shows maybe across the 18 months. But it felt like they were always playing, and like every time you went and saw them, it was like a good show. So here they are talking about their shows.
Celts Bar in Blaxland was always my favourite because it was kind of my home turf. And I mean, Brennan lived just around the corner. I lived maybe 10 minutes up the road. It felt like, you walk from outside, bright sunny day, into this like dark cavern, and it's like just turning into another world. It's awesome. And there was always a rider at Kelt's Bar. So there's always a bucket of beers, which was great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like we played PCYC in Penrith first, and it was packed. There's a photo of that with it, like all the kids on the stage at the end. So yeah, that was pretty sweet. It's pretty packed too. And then we did one up at Kelt's Bar for the oldies. And that was like every time we played Kelt's Bar, it was packed. Like, that's why they kept getting us back. They paid us fucking peanuts, but we packed it out.
Playing with Area 7 was like a dream. I mean, I love those guys and respect them a lot. They were always cool. So the Area 7 show was cool. Louisville Sluggers shows as well. The Porkers. Even, like, honestly, Grounded Festival was amazing. That was, like, one of the first times I'd played a festival, of course, and I remember the Skank Pit being pretty chaotic. I remember looking out into the crowd and thinking, like, shit, yeah, this is such a vibe. This is great. And our last show at PCYC, that was so emotional on so many levels. Like, all the people knowing the lyrics to our songs, people getting up on stage, as like a last hurrah with Joe on vocals at least. That was a good memory. I remember coming out of that and I was like, wow, like we packed out this PCYC with everyone knowing our music. This is amazing. Bittersweet.
So we're heading towards the time of the band when Joe left the band. So he stopped being the singer, but the band didn't finish there. So this is just another song from that live CD. It's a cover, and I'll just won't really introduce it. I'll just play it. Here it is.
Working hard to make a living, take a shelter from the rain. The father son had to carry on, blue dead arm in his face. Whoa, he's a working class man. But still trying to suffer, he's a legend of his kind. He's running like a cyclone across the world, blue western sky. Whoa, he's a working class man. Whoa, he's got an outlet. He gets out when it's down. He spent his time in Vietnam, still mad at Uncle Sam. He's a single man with a heart of gold in a complicated life. Whoa, he's a working class man. I'm not a working class man. Fuck being a working class man. When I was a little woman, someday you'll make his wife. He's paving all the overtime for the one love of his life. He ain't worried about tomorrow, he just made up his mind. Life's too short for burning bridges, take it one day at a time. Whoa, he's a working class man. Whoa, he's a working class man.
So we're at the point now, I think there's like in the timeline that we've been covering, there's like about probably 4 months left before the band called it quits. And so Joe left the band. I have to keep resisting calling him Joe Cool because that's how he's credited on the CD. Joe Catanzaro left the band to go and join Unpaid Debt, and he was with that band for a long time. And so little more than you, the rest of the band, they were a pretty tight unit. So like the band was tight, and they decided to audition some singers. And here is Flavell and Chloe talking about their journey to finding a new singer.
He was a fan of, I'm pretty sure he was a fan of Speckled Foam and went to school with Joe. He did sing a song with us before Joe left. Joe had a sore throat one night and he wanted to rest halfway through the set, and Scotty came up and sang a song. But no, we held auditions and a few people turned up. I remember Scotty Trombone had a mate who had a go. There was a girl who used to work at the Kelt's Bar, actually, and I really wanted her to audition. She used to close the cash register with a butt. She'd do like this little dance where she'd close the cash register with a butt and then hand you your change back after your beer. It would have been cool to have two chicks in the band, and like, you know, that could have been a different direction we went in, but she never turned up for the audition.
And then yes, you got Scott in, and he obviously
Then he auditioned, and I kind of just went, if we want to keep going straight away, like, it's basically Scott or nobody. Like, there's no one else, and not to put down Scott like that. Like, it's not like we're scraping the barrel. That we could have kept like looking around. That it was cool. We all liked him. We had fun. It was quite good actually, because me, him, and Marty and Fuzzy would sit on Marty's mum's back deck with an acoustic guitar, write songs in falsetto because we couldn't be too loud, and then we'd get back to the studio, you know, that weekend or one night that week, and realise that it was in the totally wrong key because we couldn't sing like that naturally. So we'd have to change the key, work the song out again, and we kind of probably grew a bit, having to step up and start writing and coming up with things. Like, it was the songs are quite like different than Joe's. Joe's are like really poppy and catchy and great songs.
Scotty, I can't remember whose connection it was that introduced him, but yeah, obviously, once Joe had left for unpaid debt, we got Scotty in. We did a bunch of rehearsals with him, and I think we did maybe 2 gigs with him, 1 or 2. Obviously it's a different vibe, and I know, like, this applies to any band, right? Because vocals are such a unique quality. Sure, I mean, people are going to hate me for this, but yes, guitars, other instruments are replaceable, but vocals obviously bring a unique quality that kind of, you know, defines your band. So it's always a big move to change your vocalist. And anyway, Scotty, you know, he did his best. He was giving it his all. He knew he couldn't be exactly Joe, and you know, we all knew, and we didn't expect that of him. But he brought his own flair, and we jammed a bit, and then again for other reasons as well. Like, it just kind of fizzled, I guess.
So talking about Scotty Pierce there. So two Scotts in the band: Scott Carroll, the trombonist, and Scotty Pierce, the second vocalist. I did try to reach out to Scott, but Scott Pierce, but he wasn't really contactable through social media, which is how I tend to contact people. And it would have been cool just to hear from him. Something that we haven't really covered as well in this podcast is Flavell swears that there's another EP that the band recorded with Scott Pierce on vocals at the end of Little More Than His Lifetime. And the problem is no one's got a copy of it, and no one except for Flavell remembers it. So every other band member goes, no, I don't remember that. I don't know. It would be cool to hear that if it comes to light. And I think the members of the band would be interested in hearing that too, because they've clearly forgotten it if it happened. So now we're getting to the end part. Scott Pierce played a handful of shows with the band. I remember seeing him sing with the band once, and he was a good singer. But the band just sort of pulled apart at this point for a variety of reasons. Nothing dramatic. And here's some of the members talking about why the band ended at that time. We've got Scott, Adam, Tim, and Chloe all talking about that.
Our last gig at PCYC at Penrith. By that stage, we had Scotty on vocals, and our EP had been out for a while. We had 400 people at the gig in the gymnasium at PCYC, and we had everyone singing along, and that was really cool. I remember there was this real bittersweet moment because we knew that it was our last gig, and we had just got to the point where everybody knew our songs. And of course, everybody swamped the stage at the end and trying to keep amps and things in place while everybody's clambering over leads and things. But again, that was just that vibe of we are no more than you. Come on up, and we were all in it together. So I think it's as close as a punk ska band can get to a campfire experience. You know, we were all in it together.
Yeah.
Well, Scott was a friend of the band, basically. I know he was good friends with Joe, and maybe Flavell as well. But yeah, he was just he was a dude. He was always around, and we ended up being pretty good mates. So yeah, he could sing. You know, he had a voice. He had a good voice, but you know, we got together and we tried to write a few new songs without Joe, and we just couldn't quite hit it. You know, I'm not sure if we did many live shows with Scotty, maybe one or two, but you know, Joe wrote really good, catchy songs, and you know, it's not everyone can do that, as we found out.
We did. I was moving into the city. My whole world was changing. My friendship group was changing. Everything. So, yeah, I think I would rock up to practice it like just in a bit of a daze. It was a way to, like, you know, escape my life for a few hours. But I do remember having this feeling that it's not the same. You know, Scotty was fine. He was a good singer. He knew the songs. We played in the same way, but, you know, Joe knew how to front a band, and he really had a joie de vivre that was hard to match. And yeah, I think people have very different interpretations of what went on, but for me, yeah, it was a period of my life, and I think all the other elements of that life were in a period of flux and change. So it was kind of, in a sense, natural for me to, when it was starting to shut down, that was kind of natural for me.
No, it would have been great to have kept going. I mean, that was, again, peak time for ska punk bands. It would have been nice to have recorded more material, did a few more shows for sure. Hard to say. I mean, yeah, it was just such a great feeling to have that project and to have that creative outlet, definitely for me at least. Again, with the timing in school, like, it was unfortunate that it was peak HSC moment for me, and, you know, I made that choice. But again, had I not been in that time or whatever reason, like, I think continuing it would have been cool and would have been nice to have played, I don't know, Big Day Out or some of the bigger festivals. That would have been awesome, but hard to say what would have happened.
Yeah, so I remember at the time when, it probably would have been you that told me that they'd broken up, and I was I just couldn't believe it. I was in total shock. I was like, what? These guys are like, they're pulling like huge crowds. They just brought out an EP like 6 months before, and now they're calling it quits. And yeah, I was completely in shock because I wasn't on social media or anything. I wasn't a MySpace kid or anything like that. And
I think
I had absolutely no idea there was even friction or anything was going on. Or
back then it would have been the Obscene forum. There was like an internet message board from Obscene where people talked about things, and the actual Obscene magazine or zine itself is how
that was where I got all my news from the scene, was Obscene.
Yeah, and we talked about Obscene at the start of this podcast, but Obscene came out like once every 2 months or once a month sometimes, so it was pretty regular. It was regular enough to have like a section where they listed all the upcoming shows for the following month, and it wouldn't be out of date or anything like that. You could look at it and go, oh cool, there's a bunch of shows next month I can go to.
Yeah.
And that's how things were before the internet, back in those ye olde days. when the internet was a phone cord that you had to unplug and plug into your computer, and it would have this crackling sound, you know, and then and no one could call you because you're on the internet.
Yeah, I can remember at that time going, MySpace.
Yeah.
You'll never get me on the internet.
Yeah, and look, some people have talked to me and referred to Noise Levels as a nostalgia project, and I think in the case of Little More Than You, very much is a nostalgia project. Yeah. Just harkening back to that time of comic book character looks and you know, ska music when ska was king, and like that sort of just hearing that ska guitar and the brass lines, it just takes me back to a certain time. And this was our youth. Like, I was 21. I was 21 when Little More Than You were at their peak. And I was writing a lot for Obscene, and hence why I know so much about it. And Little More Than You actually came over to my house at one point so I could interview them for Obscene. And just that time, and we'd have parties, and people would have these big house parties, and people would wear Hawaiian shirts and all that sort of stuff. That was part of the era.
The Hawaiian shirt.
And like just hearing them talk about it before, about how the band broke up, and like they had other things to move on to, like some of them were already at uni, some of them were going to uni, and in Chloe's case, she was doing her HSC, so it was like a very, very small, specific point in time. And it was never, like, in hindsight, it was probably never going to last beyond that.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, like, I mean, we always play gigs in front of 30 people or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'd go and watch a band like Little More Than You, and they had 300 people, people crammed in to see them. And for me, it was like, wow, these guys are a professional band. Like, to me, I had no idea that they had lives in the background. You know what I mean? Like, you sort of get that stereotype of
and I think
everyone that's pulling more than 10 people to their gigs, like,
must be this a superstar.
Like they're like full-time pros.
But the cool thing about Penrith back then is it was like they were all homegrown acts, and like it was a very self-sustaining, healthy music scene for that brief period of time. Lots of bands like Hass Brigade and Little More Than You and other bands.
Unpaid Debt.
Unpaid
Joe
Debt.
went on to them. They were huge,
and they were already a popular band before Joe joined them too, when they had Josh on vocals. So like a whole range of bands playing in that scene, and like the scene did keep going after Little More Than You too, with lots of other bands coming through like Faux Pas and Lucretia, and Takata kept playing strong until like 2007 or something like that. I just, before we finish up this podcast, I've got a couple more clips from Scott, Flavell, Chloe, and Tim, all just reflecting on their time in the band and talking about it, and after they've spoken about it, we'll just talk a little bit more before playing another song.
I think we were able to kind of break down that barrier between stage and audience. I think we were able to, just get in amongst it a little more. And I loved the name Little More Than You. The idea that this band is a band for the punters. We are little more than the punters there, and so I think that came across. It seemed to be something that resonated with people, whether they realised by the name or not. That was kind of the ethos of the band, was we're only as good as the punters. No one's better than anyone else, and we were there for everyone's enjoyment, including ourselves, and we were having the time of our lives.
The only thing I regret is not having a tour. Just get in a bus and go and hit Melbourne or hit Brisbane or something, like probably Melbourne more likely. That would have been really good. But, 7 people, it's very hard to get 7 people to do, when Adam was doing his HSC at one point as well, and then I think Chloe was doing her HSC a few, 18 months later or whatever. So, yeah, I wish I had the tour experience. You hear like the House of Gay Boys and Maddie talk about touring, and Checky talking about touring at his first time, like on the previous podcasts. And yeah, that's the one thing I wish I had been able to do, was to go on a tour. But then again, I look at Fuzzy now and see his touring schedule and just think, I don't want to do that. But then again, I'm not 18.
Yeah, true.
I'm actually jamming with a few people now here in Tokyo. Whether or not it amounts to anything, I don't know. But for sure it's going to be fun, and it's a reason for me to get back on the sax. Like, I have played it on and off over the years. Piano I've definitely kept up. I mean, that's just my own kind of personal outlet. Like, I've always played piano and I still continue to. But yeah, no, I'd love to get back on stage and do something. So to be continued.
Yeah, we'll look out for that. Good.
Yeah, Tokyo ska vibes. But let's see.
I think I came into Little More Than You without so much confidence. I think it taught me how to, even still to this day, I don't have a scare of going on stage. I still like wearing a jacket on a hot stage and feeling the buzz of the crowd. So whether that's in a corporate event with a big R&D facility, or whether that's playing on stage, I think, that sense of like performing for a crowd came from playing with Little More Than You. And so I just remember it as a heap of fun. But I also think that it changed me as a person, gave me more confidence, and I guess made me realize that, whenever you do that stuff, you can either be really nervous and not enjoy it, or you can just say, I'm going to have fun with it. And you go ahead and do it for the right reasons. And then actually you show this authenticity on stage, and it's actually heaps better. And I think maybe people don't even ever surpass that. Some people don't ever get to experience that in their lives. So I think it was pretty cool to be able to do that. And I think, in the end, it's not just because of Little More Than You. It's because of the music scene that was around at that point in time. And that's why I think it's really special that you're doing this thing. It's because it's capturing a scene that was really electric and alive, and it allowed all these people who maybe wouldn't have otherwise had an experience of playing in a band or getting to go on stage, that it happened there because of that scene.
And here's a quote from Marty reflecting as well on his time in Little More Than You, Marty the drummer. And something else that probably didn't come through in these quotes is Marty was sort of the quiet man behind the scenes. This is how someone described. He was very much a big creative force in the band. We heard from Scott earlier talking about Joe as a creative force, but Marty was too, from all accounts. And this is what Marty said, reflecting. He said, the band community at that point seemed fairly close-knit and supportive of each other, which was very cool to me. It was a highlight to be entertaining people who cared enough to bother to come and see us or whoever we were playing with. Without an audience, it's just a rehearsal. It was honestly a really fun thing to be a part of back then. I don't know anything about it now, but I hope that's continued. And then here's a quote from Joe, looking back as well, on his time in Little More Than You. And he said, we did a TV appearance, we recorded an EP. We had some great times. We would put on gigs at places like Blacksland Tavern, we'd pull the crowd and pack the place. But we'd always make sure all the money was divided equally amongst all the bands. There were some non-band members who were really important to the band and part of the community who supported us. Jeff, Blockbuster, and from Stage Invader, among them. Our EP launch was one of the greatest gigs I've ever played. It was my last with Little More Than You, and my first with what was, at the time, a ska punk band called Unpaid Debt. The gig was packed, at least 500 people were there. They all knew the Little More Than You songs. I still to this day don't know what would have happened if I had stayed with Little More Than You. They went on to play with Scott Pearce on vocals for some time after. It was a great time in the Western Sydney ska punk scene, and I'm so grateful for everyone who made it what it was. Loves what it's all about. Still is. So that brings us to the end, Bundy.
Yeah. I gotta say, I wasn't the guy that would sit there and, collect ska records or anything like that, but I've seen a lot of ska bands because, let's face it, they were so much fun, to go and watch. That's what ska music is all about, fun.
Yeah. I remember we used to do that move, if it was a ska show in a pub, the beer trombone, where you'd drink your beer and you'd do like a mime of it being a trombone while you're drinking it, and you'd see how long you could play along to the band while drinking the beer. And so I just want to thank all the members for talking to us. And we had people like Little More Than You. 8 people were involved in Little More Than You. We managed to talk to on recording 5 people, and then I had quotes from 2 others, and the band has spread to the 4 corners of the earth. So we have Fuzz, who now lives in Ireland, and Chloe in Japan.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Tim, who lives in Switzerland. And this is a really cool thing about this point in time when we do have social media. Social media isn't always great, but in this case, being able to talk to people overseas and record them, it's just amazing that we're able to do this. So thank you for everyone who was involved in making this podcast. It's been great to sort of revisit some of this music and some of these memories. We'll end on a song. And anything you want to say, Bundy?
No, that's pretty much a wrap up, I think.
Yeah. All right.
That's life. Your name's the breaks that we have to endure. You fall down, well man that's tough. But hell what's not, don't let it pick you up. You fall down, hey hey, hold your head high when you fall down. Pick your broken heart back up off the ground. A love that's lost, it's better than a love that man, I feel your pain, 'cause if I feel now before, don't look back now. You can only get worse, don't look back now. Think of the past, now lots of you won't be back now. Yeah, we're gonna hear, baby, if you go back down, you can get fucked. You can get fucked. You said that things just weren't working out for you and me, so that gives you the right to show me emotionally. So sorry that I disappointed you. No, I tried my best to live up to the high standards I'm supposed to. Don't look back now. You can only get worse. Don't look back now. In the past, all lots of you want me back now. You're gonna hear my better good to go back down. You can get it. Don't look back now. You can only get worse. Don't look back now. Because the past all lots of you want me back now. Yeah, we're gonna hear my better good to go back down. 'Cause that's all you're gonna get. 'Cause that's all you're gonna get. You can get. You can get. You can get fucked.
Stay black and white like checkers.
Absolutely.